Batman Beyond. When Batman Beyond premiered in 1999, it wasn't even meant to be a comic at first. It started as an animated series created by Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and Alan Burnett, pitched as a futuristic spin on Gotham. What began as an experiment quickly grew into one of the most beloved Batman stories of all time. The show's premise was simple but bold. Bruce Wayne was old, broken down by decades of fighting crime. He retired after a final mission where his failing body forced him to pick up a gun, something he swore never to do again. Years later, Neo-Gotham rose as a sprawling cyberpunk city plagued by new crime families, gangs, and corruption. That's where Terry McGinnis entered. A teenager with a troubled past, Terry stumbled into Bruce's world and eventually convinced him to pass on the mantle of Batman. From there, the series balanced two legacies. Bruce became the mentor, guiding Terry through high-tech gadgets, stealth training, and the crushing responsibility of wearing the cowl. Terry wasn't a carbon copy. He had his own voice, his own sense of humor, and a willingness to bend rules that Bruce never would. The villains reflected the new era, too. The Joker's gang terrorized the streets, and enemies like Blight, Inkway, and Spellbinder gave Neo-Gotham a distinct identity. The series was such a hit that it spawned comics, movies, and decades of fan demand for more. The 2000 animated movie Return of the Joker cemented its reputation, delivering one of the darkest Batman stories ever told. The Batman Beyond comic series later expanded the mythology, tying it more tightly into the DC universe. Fans still call for a live-action adaptation. The cyberpunk skyline, the dynamic between a frail Bruce and a young Terry, and the chance to push Batman into the future make it a project with massive potential. In many ways, it's the most natural evolution of the Batman myth, the idea that Gotham will always need a Dark Knight, even when the original one can no longer stand in the shadows. Kingdom Come. 1996 gave DC one of its most ambitious comics ever, Kingdom Come. This wasn't a regular superhero story. Mark Waid wrote it, Alex Ross painted every panel, and the result was an apocalyptic vision of the DC universe at war with itself. The story takes place in a near future where the classic Justice League, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman has stepped back. In their place, a new generation of heroes rises, but they fight recklessly, destroying cities and blurring the line between hero and villain. When a catastrophe wipes out Kansas, Superman comes out of retirement, determined to bring order again. That decision sparks a full-scale conflict between old ideals and new blood, and the world becomes the battlefield. What makes Kingdom Come stand out is how it treats superheroes like myths colliding with modern chaos. Superman is older, carrying the weight of failure. Batman is broken but still plotting, working from the shadows with an army of robotic sentries. Wonder Woman pushes for war when diplomacy fails. Even fan favorites like Shazam, Green Lantern, and The Flash appear in forms that feel larger than life, as if they've aged into gods. Alex Ross's painted art gave the book an aura no other comic had at the time. His Superman, jaw clenched and eyes blazing, became one of the most iconic depictions ever published. Scenes like the United Nations strike at the climax are remembered as some of the most striking visuals in DC history. The legacy of Kingdom Come is massive. It's been referenced in animated shows, homaged in live-action TV crossovers, and even influenced DCEU costume designs. Yet, it has never been given the true big-screen adaptation it deserves. As a movie, it could deliver the kind of large-scale superhero epic no studio has dared to attempt. An end-of-the-world showdown that treats comic heroes as living myths facing their final trial. Secret Wars. In 1984, Marvel tried something new: gather every hero, every villain, and throw them into one all-out battle. The result was Secret Wars, the first massive crossover event in comic book history. The idea came from a marketing push tied to action figures, but it turned into something far bigger. The cosmic entity known as the Beyonder kidnapped characters from across Marvel's universe and dropped them on a patchwork planet called Battle World. The rules were simple: fight until there's a winner. On the page, the fights were huge. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, and Spider-Man all shared the stage against Dr. Doom, Ultron, Magneto, and Galactus. Readers got to see combinations they had never imagined, rivalries playing out on a cosmic scale. The story left lasting scars on Marvel continuity. Spider-Man came back from Battleworld with a new black suit, sleek and alien. What seemed like a design change became one of Marvel's biggest twists, because that costume turned out to be alive and eventually became Venom. 3 decades later, Marvel revisited the idea in a completely different way. Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars in 2015 was around the collapse of the multiverse. Entire realities were destroyed until only fragments remained, stitched together into a new battle world ruled by Dr. Doom. Heroes like Reed Richards, Black Panther, and Miles Morales all had to fight to rebuild existence itself. It was an epic that closed one era of Marvel Comics and launched a new one. Both versions of Secret Wars proved how powerful crossover storytelling storytelling could be. One gave us iconic legacies, the other reshaped the Marvel universe entirely. Fans still point to them as the blueprint for how to do a superhero event, right? And with Marvel Studios already teasing Secret Wars as the finale of the multiverse saga, the pressure is enormous. As a movie, it could become the kind of blockbuster that dwarfs even Infinity War. Batman: The Long Halloween. By the mid-90s, Batman already had decades of stories behind him, but The Long Halloween carved out its own space as one of the defining arcs. Written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Tim Sale, it ran for 13 issues from 1996 to 1997 and leaned fully into Gotham as a city drowning in crime and corruption. The premise was deceptively simple: a mysterious killer struck only on holidays. Starting on Halloween night, the body count grew with each new date: Christmas, Valentine's Day, Independence Day. Batman, still early in his career, was forced into a detective's role, piecing together clues while Gotham's mob families were slowly torn apart. The atmosphere stayed dark and grounded, more in line with a crime thriller than a standard superhero showdown. The book also traced Harvey Dent's tragic downfall. He began as Gotham's ambitious district attorney, working alongside Batman and Commissioner Gordon to bring order. Over the course of the story, constant violence and betrayal pushed him closer to breaking. By the final chapters, Dent had transformed into Two-Face, one of Batman's most enduring villains. But that gradual shift gave the story a dramatic weight few Batman arcs had achieved before. Visually, Tim Sale's art defined the tone. Shadows stretched across panels, faces were exaggerated, and Gotham appeared heavy, soaked in noir. His Joker looked unhinged, while Batman's cape spread across rooftops like a living shadow. The visuals and story blended seamlessly, pulling readers deep into Gotham's gloom. The legacy of The Long Halloween reached far beyond the page. Christopher Nolan drew heavily from it when shaping The Dark Knight, especially Harvey Dent's arc and the interplay between Gotham's mob and its masked criminals. In 2021, DC released a two-part animated adaptation, but fans continued to call for a live-action, big-budget version. With its mix of murder mystery, crime drama, and superhero myth, The Long Halloween stood out as a Batman story that felt destined for the big screen. Annihilation. For years, space characters like Nova, Silver Surfer, and Star-Lord were sitting on the sidelines. Then came Annihilus. Bursting out of the negative zone, he unleashed a wave of destruction known as the Annihilation War, and suddenly Marvel's cosmic corner became the most dangerous battlefield in comics. The scale was massive. Entire star systems were wiped out, fleets crushed, and heroes who had been afterthoughts suddenly carried the weight of the galaxy. Richard Rider, better known as Nova, rose as the central figure. Once written off as Marvel's answer to Green Lantern, this story turned him into a hardened leader, holding back an endless army with sheer willpower. Drax the Destroyer, no longer the goofy version fans remembered from earlier years, became a brutal force of nature. Star-Lord found his footing here too, not yet the wisecracking figure of the MCU, but a strategist forged in war. One of the standout arcs followed Silver Surfer, who was pushed into a confrontation with Annihilus's forces and ultimately reclaimed his place as a cosmic powerhouse. Galactus himself even became a weapon, captured and turned into a doomsday device. Every chapter escalated the sense that Marvel space had never been this high stakes before. The legacy of Annihilation was enormous. It breathed life into forgotten characters and laid the foundation for what would eventually become the Guardians of the Galaxy we know today. Without this storyline, Star-Lord, Gamora, and Drax would never have had the reinvention that made them blockbuster icons. As a movie, Annihilation could expand Marvel's universe far beyond the lighthearted space opera of the Guardians films. It's a story about survival on the edge of extinction, with cosmic gods, impossible odds, and heroes stepping up in ways no one expected. Saga. In 2012, Image Comics released a series that broke every mold of what mainstream comics were supposed to be. Saga, created by writer Brian K. Vaughan and artist Fiona Staples, combined science fiction, fantasy, family drama, and political intrigue into a single sweeping story. From the first issue, it felt different, raw, personal, and wildly imaginative. The story follows Alana and Marco, two lovers from opposite sides of an intergalactic war. Alana, a soldier from a technologically advanced society, and Marco, a swordsman from a magic-based culture, choose love over bloodlines. Their relationship produces Hazel, a child whose very existence is considered impossible and dangerous by both sides of the conflict. As the war rages, the small family is hunted across galaxies, forced to survive while being chased by governments, bounty hunters, and even supernatural forces. What set Saga apart was the tone. Vaughn's writing made alien worlds feel grounded, and Staples' artwork turned the bizarre into something breathtaking. Robot princes with televisions for heads, heads, mercenaries bonded to ghostly children, winged armies clashing with horned warriors. All of it felt surreal, yet emotionally real. At its core, it was about raising a child in a world determined to tear families apart. The reception was immediate. Saga won multiple Eisner Awards, became one of Image's best-selling books, and drew mainstream attention far beyond typical comic circles. Readers lined up for new issues, and critics compared it to the best of prestige TV and epic novels. Its blend of war and intimacy earned it a reputation as one of the greatest modern comics. On-screen, Saga could rival Game of Thrones or Star Wars in scale. The politics, the violence, the deeply human moments. It's a story built for the big screen. With the right adaptation, it could capture audiences who have never picked up a comic before. House of M. By 2005, Marvel had been building toward a breaking point with Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. She had already torn the Avengers apart in Avengers Disassembled, but House of M took her story to a level that left a permanent mark on the Marvel Universe. The event begins with Wanda's powers spiraling out of control. Her ability to bend reality had grown so unstable that the Avengers and the X-Men debated whether she had become too dangerous to live. Before they could decide her fate, Wanda reshaped all of existence with a single thought. In an instant, the world was reborn as the House of M. A reality where mutants were no longer the minority, they were the ruling class. Magneto, her father, sat at the top as monarch, and humans found themselves living under mutant dominance. The altered world gave each hero their heart's desire. Spider-Man lived a happy life with Gwen Stacy. Wolverine finally remembered his entire past, and others enjoyed the peace they could never find in the real world. But the illusion couldn't last. Wolverine's awareness of the change sparked a resistance, and slowly, the truth of Wanda's creation came to light. It all built to one of the most famous moments in Marvel history. Cornered and broken, Wanda uttered 3 words: "No more mutants." With that, reality snapped back. But not cleanly. Millions of mutants lost their powers overnight, reducing their numbers to a fraction of what they had been. The phrase became a rallying cry. For years, X-Men comics carried the weight of that single act, shaping every storyline that followed. As a movie, House of M could deliver the most emotionally charged Marvel story yet. Sandman, Preludes, and Nocturnes. Written by Neil Gaiman, the opening arc, Preludes and Nocturnes, introduced readers to Dream of the Endless, a figure older than gods, ruling over the realm of sleep itself. The story begins with a mistake. A group of occultists, led by Roderick Burgess, attempt to capture Death in a ritual. Instead, they trap her brother Dream, sealing him away for decades. His imprisonment leaves the waking world unbalanced. People fall into eternal sleep, others never dream again, and the subtle threads of reality start to fray. When Dream finally escapes, weakened and stripped of his power, he must reclaim his 3 stolen tools: his pouch of sand, his helm, and his ruby. Each recovery sends him deeper into surreal and often terrifying encounters, journeys that blend myth, horror, and philosophy. What made Sandman revolutionary was its scope. Gaiman didn't write a superhero story. He wrote a myth that stretched across history, literature, and human imagination. Dream's path crossed with figures like John Constantine and even the Justice League, but the tone was nothing like standard DC fare. Horror elements seeped through, most famously in the chilling 24 Hours issue, where a man armed with Dream's ruby turns a diner into a nightmarish stage of madness and death. Visually, the series was unlike anything else on the shelves. The early artists, Sam Keith, Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, created a dreamscape that felt unstable and strange, as if the pages themselves were shifting while you read. The impact was massive. Sandman earned critical acclaim, won awards outside the comic industry, and pushed the medium into mainstream recognition as serious literature. Today, it's studied alongside classic novels and has been referenced in countless cultural works. Netflix adapted it into a series in 2022, but a full-scale film trilogy with the budget to capture Gaiman's grand vision would be a cultural event on par with The Lord of the Rings. Crisis on Infinite Earths. In 1985, DC Comics set out to do something no publisher had ever attempted before: tear down its entire universe and rebuild it from the ground up. The result was Crisis on Infinite Earths, a 12-issue epic written by Marv Wolfman and drawn by George Perez, and it remains one of the most influential crossover events in comic history. The premise came out of necessity. After decades of storytelling, DC's multiverse had grown cluttered with alternate Earths, conflicting character backstories, and timelines that no longer fit together. The solution was a cosmic reset. Enter the Anti-Monitor, a being born from the antimatter universe, who began consuming worlds across the multiverse one by one. What followed was destruction on a scale readers had never seen. Entire Earths blinked out of existence in panels filled with Perez's breathtaking artwork, crowds of heroes, villains, and civilians watching as their realities collapsed. The scope was staggering. Superman from Earth 2, Batman from Earth 1, and dozens of other versions of classic characters fought side by side as the multiverse unraveled. The series also delivered some of the most shocking character deaths ever printed. Supergirl sacrificed herself in issue number 7, dying in Superman's arms in one of the most iconic covers of all time. Soon after, Barry Allen, the Flash, gave his life by outrunning the Anti-Monitor's antimatter cannon, disappearing into the Speed Force for decades. These weren't temporary shock moments. They stuck, reshaping DC for years to come. By the end, the multiverse was gone. DC's continuity was streamlined into a single Earth, designed to make the comics accessible for new readers. The aftermath reset everything, and Crisis became the blueprint for how publishers handle event storytelling. As a movie, the comic would be the ultimate DC crossover. Bigger than Justice League, bigger than anything the studio has attempted. It's the story that redefined comic book universes, proving that endings could be just as legendary as beginnings. And that's it. Now to you, if the studios gave you the director's chair, which of these comics would you adapt first, and how would you bring it to life? Comment down below, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos like this one.